Howdy. There we go. Okay. One of the things I learned after coming here to A&M is that howdy can be used in lots of ways. Obviously, just as a greeting, but to get everybody's attention, to get people to quiet down, all kinds of, depends on the context, like I guess some foreign languages or something. Next thing on the agenda is our first panel, and this is on mission critical push to talk. We did have Jim Holthaus from the DOJ was going to be the moderator. My understanding is he is online, but we're having some difficulties with the audio. So I'm going to introduce Jim, but Walt is going to take the place of moderating on the stage for us. So Jim's had a very long career in radio and push to talk. So he was active in the development of lots of land mobile radio standards since 1993. As I was typing these, I mistyped and I put 1913, and I thought, no, it can't be that long. He's also been the chairman of a whole variety of TIA standards bodies. Currently, he's a member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, the Association of Public Safety Communications Officers. He's vice chair of the P25 Technology Interest Group, and he's chair of the Telecommunications Industry Association Private Radio Section. Currently, Jim serves as a consultant for the DOJ, focused as a subject matter expert on wireless and mobile mobility. And we can ask the rest of the panel to come on stage. So we've got Sridhar Kowdley from DHS. I think Sanjay, are you here? Sanjay Gowda from Verizon. Harish from Motorola. I'm not going to try that last name. Negalaguli, is that right? Yeah. Oh, I got it. Okay. And John Cheney, there you are, from City of Irving. And I guess Bob Escala is not here. We haven't seen him. Okay. And then Walt, you want to take it away? Sure.
All right. Well, we get mic'd up here. So mission critical push to talk is basically, for those of you that are not familiar with it, or mission critical services, actually. Mission critical services are designed to convert voice communications to broadband. They're designed to take video communications and bring them over to broadband. And they're also involved in bringing data services over. The reason they're referred to as mission critical is because there is a prioritization process that goes on in the network that gives them higher priority than anything else that's out there at the time that something happens. So mission critical obviously means they're all the time, no matter what, right? So that's the goal we're striving for. That's the direction. Jim was here, or not, Jim wasn't here. Some of his team were here at the last Interoperability Institute from the Department of Justice. And one of the issues that they were bringing up is the fact that a number of federal agencies have gone ahead and done their own thing with mission critical push to talk services, but they haven't, they were not able to talk to each other. Works great within your own agency, works great within your own system, but when you try to start talking in between systems, it didn't function. So Jim has been very, very, very instrumental in pushing this entire initiative along. But this issue has many, many layers to it that are going to be required to make it work. Starting basically starting at the service provider level. So probably what I'll do then is I'll start off with Sanjay from the service provider side, looking at what they're doing with the services and where they plan on going with it and kind of what's important to them. Then we'll go ahead and switch on over to Department of Homeland Security with Sridhar. And Sridhar will talk about their efforts to try to push this initiative on quite a bit. Harish is with Motorola Solutions, and they make one of the largest, best known mission critical services that are out there. Also worked with them at the mission critical plug test in Malaga, Spain last October. So they're very, very active in pushing this initiative as well. And then really last but not least, we'll end up with John Cheney, bringing it down to the boots level. Why does this matter to people that are out in the field? Why does it matter to the folks that are actually going to be using those services? Because that obviously is what interoperability is all about. So that being said, Sanjay, you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. You want me to come there? Or?
You have a mic on, so it's your show.
Okay. All right. Howdy. I think that's a tradition, right? Well, my name is Sanjay Gowda. I'm the product manager for push-to-talk and MCPTT products and solutions at Verizon. Been on this role for quite some time, and it's an honor to be part of this esteemed panel, and always love to be part of Interop. Been coming here for a few times, and love this university, love this place, food, and everything. So just a few things before I get into what we do at Verizon. When we think about push-to-talk, MCPTT, and LMR, few things always come up at the top of the conversation. One, connectivity, coverage, reliability, KPIs, interoperability, and the security, quality of quality of service offered. These things always at the top of the mind when we talk about these things. So let me just go through a few of these things. What do they mean, and what do we do at Verizon? So let's look at the coverage and the connectivity. So when you look at the connectivity, there is a multi-layers over there. We have 4G and 5G. Within 5G, we have different bands, C band, millimeter wave. So these are all different layers covering pretty much everywhere. On top of that, we do have the like LMR, your own private network. We do have a 4G, 5G private networks. So there's a multi-layers of connectivity and the coverage that is provided right now on the broadband cellular public cellular networks. So when you compare to the LMR, just to give compare LMR and the MCPTT push-to-talk, so the multitude of options that you have with the connectivity and things like that. Of course, LMR is a very indispensable, has been there, will continue to be there for critical communications. So when we talk about the QoS, hey, what's up with the QoS? So there are three parts there, right? One, priority, preemption, and the network QoS. So what is a priority and preemption? What are these things? Priority is when the network is really, really congested, we want to be able to connect to the network no matter what. And we want to prioritize the public safety users than anybody else, standard users or anybody else, and the priority. Preemption is anybody, when the public safety users are on the network, and we want to be able to preempt everybody else and allocate those resources to the public safety users. And third one is the network QoS, where we differentiate this particular traffic over anybody else. So we provide that across all these different layers that we talked about at the 4G, 5G, private networks. And for that matter, even you can have your 4G, 5G, or push-to-talk and MCPTT over any transport. You may not have the QoS outside of these networks, but you can still make it work. So the other part is hey, I want to have compared to the LMR, I have so much reliability there. And what about what do I do with the public networks? You can have your on-prem solution too. You can bring the push-to-talk and MCPTT just like what you have, kind of put it in your network as well. So there are multitude of options. I believe that I think we are in a critical stage or a transitional phase where MCPTT and push-to-talk can be a very reliable solutions for public safety. That doesn't mean that we want to get away from the LMR. LMR probably continues to be there, but you can augment, extend your coverage, your additional growth in using the push-to-talk and MCPTT. And MCPTT push-to-talk are a fraction of the cost of what you generally have in the LMR. So with all of that, and the devices ecosystem is growing. It's not just only the smartphones. You have ruggedized devices similar to LMR and a fraction of the cost. And there are a variety of accessories available in the MCPTT and push-to-talk world. So in all, I think there is there's a lot of options and choices from the connectivity and reliability, security, on all aspects. And in addition to that, more features that are available in the push-to-talk and MCPTT as well. Video streaming is one among them. There are many others. And when you think about the other things that we can do actually with on the smartphones, integration with the other applications, public safety, IoT, AI, you can do a lot more when you have these applications on the public networks with the smartphones. So I'm happy to take any questions and happy to kind of talk to any questions on the MCPTT push-to-talk.
All right, and I think it's okay with everyone. We'll hold off the questions until the last presenter. By the way, I was also just informed that Jim, I think we can hear you if you unmute. You want to say howdy to everybody?
Yeah, so can you hear me, Walt?
Yes, you are that voice in the sky.
Great, great. Hey, howdy, and really disappointed that I'm not there in person. The severe weather down in Houston and United Airlines had other ideas about getting me there. So I'm participating from Omaha, Nebraska today. So.
Okay, and I think what we'll do then, Jim, is we'll have you on right before John Chaney, then also representing the boots on the ground. Before we do get off the service providers, by the way, we are currently interconnected with both the Verizon and the T-Mobile labs, working on mission critical push to talk as one of the feature sets that we are working on. By the way, we also have, you'll see them here, we have representatives from the government of Sweden, and mission critical push to talk is ultra critical in all of Europe. So number of us that are here today will be meeting again next week in Dubai at the global communication or critical communications world. I'm sorry. So that's being held in Dubai. So this is not just a US issue. This is an international issue. Harish, go ahead, sir. View from Motorola. We'll do Jim after.
No, I have the slide, so maybe.
Oh, okay. Valerie. And by the way, I've messed up the order completely since I'm pinch hitting here. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think Harish's slides are towards the very end of the presentation.
okay, wonderful. So we'll do Jim. These are your slides, right?
Yeah.
All right, Jim, you're up next.
Okay. Why don't we go back to the first slide then? Okay, so just a quick disclaimer, as Wald indicated, I am a consultant for the U.S. Department of Justice, but I need to point out that any information I share here is not necessarily representative of GOJ's position on this, and any products or services that are named are for reference only and not to be considered an endorsement.
Only verbally.
Next slide, please. So one of the things that we did at DOJ is we started looking at the LMR world, or the mission critical push to talk world, and how it could be used in our particular environment for federal law enforcement wireless communications. And just real quickly, we differ a little bit from a lot of the state, local, or tribal public safety organizations. So nationwide coverage is critically important for us. We typically do not have dispatch. We tend to use more situational awareness tools amongst our users. So things like TAC are very important for us. And we do have a greater need for encrypted operation. Pretty much everything we do, by the way, is encrypted. And also, we operate daily with our other federal, state, local, or tribal partners. So we're trying to figure out how broadband push to talk and mission critical push to talk can play a role in our use cases. So next slide, please. So as part of that, we decided to determine how we should evaluate broadband push to talk. And so comparing that to the wide acceptance of our Project 25 land mobile radio, we decided to kind of focus in on several key aspects like call setup time, audio delay, how intelligible is the audio in high noise public safety environments, things like how loud are the devices out on the field, and whether they support late entry into calls already in process. So we took a quick look at all of these different technologies and compared them back to what P25 LMR does to say, is this technology really mature enough for us to begin thinking about deploying out into the field? So next slide, please. And I'll keep this really very high level here just to let you know. But we looked at call setup times. We measured P25 trunked LMR on the state of Nebraska's trunking system for how long it takes to set up a call from push to talk. And then did the same thing for various implementations of push to talk, whether they were mission critical push to talk or proprietary implementations, whether they were carrier integrated or whether they were over the top. And as you can see here, pretty much in all cases, the push to talk flavors in terms of call setup time compared very favorably to our P25 solutions. And if you look at that chart down below, you'll see two lines across the top. One is sort of the P25 recommended performance value for non-simulcast trunking, and then that gray line is P25's recommended performance level for simulcast. And so as you can see, everything really worked well relative to P25 land mobile. Next slide, please. Okay, and then in this this exercise, we measured the audio delay through the systems. And again, you can see for the most part, everything came, performance-wise compared very well. A couple of things. That first sort of orange line across there is P25 conventional repeat. So that's radio to repeater to radio. The next line, that gray line, is P25 single site trunking. Very few people have actually deployed single site trunking. And then the yellow line up above is the sort of the performance limit for multi-site trunking. So again, as you can see, all of these technologies for a large complex push-to-talk solution compared to a large complex P25 implementation performs extremely well. Okay, next slide. So then, without getting into a whole lot of detail here on how we actually ran this evaluation, we set out to measure audio intelligibility of the various devices. P25 LMR devices went through a considerable amount of development to get the digital vocoder intelligibility high when we got all these different public safety background noises. And so then we went and recorded basically 3 test sentences in each background noise case, ran those through a Microsoft speech to text translation device, and then looked at how the initial text that was read into the device compared to what was received on the other end. Primarily did this so we would have an evaluation methodology that would compare microphones and all the other aspects of the devices in a high noise environment, and would be repeatable so that we could go back and repeat it and generate effectively the same results time after time. So next slide. This is a fairly busy slide, but the bottom line result is the audio intelligibility for the push-to-talk devices exceeded or was equal to what public safety is used to in their P25 LMR devices. So definitely a positive result there. Next slide, please. I think probably one of the biggest concerns that people expressed is we've got these big, brick LMR radios, and we've got these small smartphone type devices that really haven't been designed for high noise environments, and how well are we going to be able to hear that audio on the fire ground or in the law enforcement environments where our officers and agents are operating. And so we did some measurements to see how loud devices could be. And so the first three columns there, I think, are P25 devices, and then the next ones are various LMR or smartphone type devices. And the only one that's really kind of coming up a little bit short is the Samsung X Cover Pro, which interestingly enough looks quite a bit more like a off-the-shelf cellular smartphone as opposed to one modified for, definitely public safety grade usage. So next slide, please. And then the last kind of major area that we looked at is how does late entry work on these P25 devices? So we would set, or on the push to talk devices, so we would set a call up in process, and then we would switch a device from one talk group into the talk group that was currently active and measured sort of the delay time from when we selected the new talk group to when we started hearing audio out of that. And what we saw here again, especially with the mission critical push to talk integrated solutions, is performance exceeding what we were able to measure on the P25 type devices. We did run into some problems with devices that weren't carrier integrated. They seem to be quite a bit slower, and it's hard to tell right now whether that's from the basis of carrier integrated solution or if it's just the way the client app on the smartphone looked. And I have not yet been able, just point out, I have not been able to measure the performance of ES Chat yet, since I don't have active talk groups on that technology right now, but that's one of those things for later. And then next slide, please. So, what we've really come to discover is that the push-to-talk solutions and devices are definitely usable and offer us options for federal law enforcement use. The performance of the devices is consistent with our P25 LMR. And, as Sanjay from Verizon said, one of the things that's, really critical for us as a nationwide agency is that nationwide coverage or nearly nationwide coverage, and it far exceeds what we can afford to build out relative to LMR. So it's definitely going to be part of our consideration going forward. And in fact, department-wide right now, we have deployed over 10,000 users with push-to-talk solutions, and we are getting extremely good feedback for that. But then, I'd also point out there's some additional considerations that we definitely want to focus in on, and that is interoperability between push-to-talk solutions and P25 LMR. And would be remiss if I didn't point out, at this point in game, the real strength of the P25 LMR is their resiliency and its redundancy when things go bad, right? We have multiple degraded modes of operation, from wide area trunking to site trunking to conventional repeat, and finally direct mode device to device operation, that we don't really have those that widespread resiliency in the push to talk on cellular networks. So, and I think that ends where I'm at. And I think Walt, in terms of the way we had this laid out before my travel got interrupted, we were going to have John Chaney talk a little bit next about some of the work that they've done in Irving with interoperability between push-to-talk and P25.
Well, Jim, we knew that you would be able to be heard in a HUVA community, the people that are online, but we weren't 100% sure your audio was going to get into the room here. But since it is, why don't you take over as a moderator? You're coming in 5 by 5. So yeah, go ahead, Lynn. Why don't you take it?
Okay. So, John, I'll hand things off to you and let you talk about. John didn't have slides, so he's just going to talk about some of the experiences that they've had at Irving. So go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you, Jim, and good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to share some of the things we've done at Harris County, where I came from, Harris County. Back before FirstNet, we had started the deployment of the broadband network, right? So I've been working in that realm for a while and had that passion for the first responders and making sure that everything we do is interoperable, right? So at Irving, what we've done is tried to implement at those standards levels the push to talk. And just this past week, got our connection with T-Mobile up. So what we have is and Verizon is our carrier, and Verizon's the one we work with from the beginning and been a great partner. But we've worked to get FirstNet tied in as well as T-Mobile, all interfaced to the land mobile radio network. And that was a directive from our city manager to look at how we can save money. It's been mentioned about the cost of devices, and we know the cost of devices and all that, right? So not so much for mission critical. Initially, we were looking at saving money for our general gov agencies, our parks, and different governmental agencies outside of public safety. Although there was some public safety usage, we're using it on the public safety side for expanded range and stuff like that for undercover and different things like that. That gives us the coverage side of it. So the big thing I wanted to kind of show today was actually that interoperability and how it does work and how we do have it interfaced to all those networks. So we got a few props out in the crowd. There's Thomas Gilbert from BB-Wax, and he has a land mobile radio device as well as a FirstNet device with a Verizon cross carrier license on that FirstNet device. We're going to be talking on a talk group that has been coordinated by the state. The state tied a number of our land mobile radio networks, pretty large networks in the state, together with some interoperability talk groups called TIRIS, 1 through 10. And we'll be on 1. So any one of those different systems, which cover a large area of the state in different areas, geographic Houston, Tex Warren from Galveston up to Longview, over to Waco, through East Texas. You got Gators through the Austin area, and you got Intern in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I'm probably missing some, Aaron? LCRA, thank you, Aaron. And DPS has a few other smaller sites that are tied in as well, right? But so we have those tied together, but because it is part of Motorola's solution with Critical Connect, we also have our land mobile radio networks, but we also have all of those on the carrier devices as well. So on T-Mobile now, FirstNet, Verizon, and our land mobile radio network. So Thomas, if you could, I'm on a T-Mobile device, and Thomas, if I could talk to you on TIRIS 1 on your land mobile radio. Radio service testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm sorry, I didn't have my, but so that's LMR local, and that's a large system. That's Tex Warren. So back covers from Waco, or from Longview down to Galveston, through Waco. And Thomas also has a FirstNet device with a Verizon cross carrier license, which you just log into, which is an over-the-top app, right? So not mission critical, but it interoperability and giving that end user a tool, right? Thomas? So Verizon cross carrier license, talking to T-Mobile, talking to all those other networks as well, right? We also have in the audience, thanks Thomas, Mike Sheets, one of our engineers at City of Irving. Mike has my old AT&T phone, which is turned off, and it's using Wi-Fi with a Verizon cross carrier license on Tiers 1. Sorry, my phone went to sleep. Radio service testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you copy, Mike? Okay, that's over Wi-Fi. We also have Sal with a Verizon Kyocera device. And Sal, where are you at? If you can give me a call. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So from the Verizon Kyocera device to our T-Mobile device, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I have Gary Wilkes with TDM, and Gary's on a FirstNet Motorola device on Tiers 1. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. 10, 4, test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So as you can see, as far as interoperability, it's back to we've interfaced everything at those levels, the ISSI inter-subsystem interface with Motorola, where the standards are set. But once you cross those networks, is it truly mission critical? Probably not. I mean, we saw some things during the eclipse that we'll be visiting on and things like that. But I think it's for us to push those to make sure that the things are working properly and things like that, right? But the big thing is have the tools and have the interoperability between the networks, because you should have a choice what network you want. It don't matter, for whatever business case that entity needs to make that choice, right? Whether it be coverage or whatever, right? Support or whatever, you should be able to make that choice, right? So I think that's really critical. And we know it all works, right? All the work everybody's doing, Walton and different others, right? Jim, on the standards body side, making sure that all those interfaces are following the standards. And that is so important that they do follow the standards, because the end user should have the choice and, the ability to use it. So no matter what's going on, no matter where, you bring your device, and it don't even matter if it is a device on one network, you can use a cross-carrier license from another provider and be able to talk, right? Outside of that, I think that's about it.
All right. Thank you, John. That was pretty impressive. Those demos, it even picked up over the video link. I was able to hear all that here. So thank you for that. And so then Sridhar.
Yeah, so I think, John, you figured everything out. We can
Well, y'all figured it
we can
out.
all spend the next 3 days hanging around College Station. No, actually, I did want to talk about a couple of things, and I think you brought up some great points. Next slide, please. So why S&T? This is our slide to say our office, the Office for Interoperability and Compatibility, was set up congressionally mandated after 9/11 to make sure interoperability exists. And our focus is testing emerging technologies, especially as it relates to emergency communications. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do is talk across the enterprise. What kind of things are we doing? Just to give you guys a flavor, and then just have a few takeaways. I don't want to take too long given the amount of time we have left. But if you look all the way to the left, you have to look at the actual land mobile radio. So S&T actually runs the testing program to ensure interoperability for all P25 radios. Right next to it, if you really look at the interconnection, and I think John covered it, it's the ISSI stands for RF inter-subsystem interface. or the console subsystem interface, the ISSI and CSSI. For those of you that aren't LMR versed or P25 versed, those are like the IWF that you look at. They're not 100% 3GPP compliant. They're on the TIA side. So we actually test those gateways and make sure they work and that they're compatible and standards conformant. So we look at three basic things. One is, does the function work? We do have some performance tests, but primarily we're looking at conformance to standards and then interoperability. So what we believe is if you meet the standards, you're very highly interoperable. So but we do require both the interoperability and standards conformance to ensure that you get the tick mark from us with regard to what's standard compliance. The next thing that we really want to talk about, and I think you covered a lot of it, John, which is interoperability between applications. We don't want to say one application is better than the other, and I think Jim did an excellent presentation with regard to delay and audio quality and other things. What we want to say is, hey, there are different applications. And to give you an example, within SNT, we have 3 components that are using different applications that are non-standard, non-compatible, non-interoperable, right? So interoperability is achieved by going not on broadband, but on the LMR systems, or you've got to have some sort of gateway to plug it all in. And we don't think that's the way to operate. So my recommendation is for those of you that want to look at it, ensure that you understand what the trade-offs are and take a look at it. Mission critical means you are connected to the core, and the core allows you to make decisions and meet certain KPIs. If you're over the top, it's always best effort. So if you have a really bad day, Mother's Day and a catastrophe, chances are that you're going to have delays and or loss of packets and or messages. CAD to CAD, well, CAD to CAD is a problem that has existed for 30 years. So we are working with, I think Dan mentioned IGES, for example. We are working with IGES to kind of define CAD to CAD interoperability. And we are working with our partners at CISA very closely to, I believe that there's a pilot going on right now with Motorola and one other vendor to do CAD to CAD interoperability using some sort of standard conformance set. And finally, the other thing that we've been working with Walt on is NG911. We're looking at how do you ensure interoperability to the NENA I3 standard. And the great news is that the work that we're doing can be leveraged worldwide. So for our partners in Sweden and other countries, they can leverage what we're doing in terms of ensuring compliance to the NENA I3 standard. Now, this is just in the area of interoperability. We are doing a huge amount of research, and I think the topic of this panel is Sidelink and comms resiliency. One of the things that we see between LMR and broadband is you cannot, with broadband systems, once the network goes down, you are dead in the water. We really believe Sidelink or off-network comms is crucial, because if the comms goes away, even LMR isn't always 100%, it's susceptible. So Sidelink, resilient comms, off-network comms capability, Sidelink with multi-hop, we think those kinds of research elements are what S&T really wants to take a look at and promote. Next slide. So what we want to talk about this is, and the reason I have this slide is, especially when it comes to marketing, people say you meet standards. People say you meet requirements. You know, the point that I'm trying to make here is it must be tested. You have to have an independent third party test and validate that the standards and interoperability is met. And so we highly recommend that whatever you do, ensure that you go through a program with independent third parties and independent laboratories. And we really like the idea of ISO 17025 compliant laboratories, because that means that you now have a process of managing data and ensuring that when you run a test repeatedly, you get the same results. If they don't have good data management or processes, you might not get the same result than each time when you run the test. So again, we recommend that. Next slide, please. You can skip this one. So this kind of talks and alludes to the fact that the applications on the right are all over the top, and none of those are interoperable. So the issue that we get is if you are, I'll pick Virginia since I know Virginia really well, and you probably run into this in your jurisdictions, but if Arlington picks one application and another jurisdiction picks another application, chances are on the broadband side, they're not interoperable. And so we really recommend that you have those conversations with your partners, at least your partners who are working together, to make sure that you are interoperable. Next slide. Okay, so this kind of shows you the complex ecosystem we have. A while ago, you just had radio, right? Analog radio, click. And then you had yeah, there you go. Then you had LMR P25, and then people started doing what they call bridging system interface or twisted pair for interoperability. So again, you had one level of interoperability that you had to solve. Click it again, please. And then you had over-the-top applications that people started developing. Well, now you had a third level of interoperability. And then the mission critical stuff came up. And so what you're seeing is from over the top to mission critical, there are no ways to solve that interoperability easily in a standard conformant way. So if you can just click through all the way. So what that's showing is we do have a bunch of research going on, and so we have a company called Catalyst that S&T worked with NIST on. And what we did is they do a really good job of presenting a console interface. But what's really cool about it is they're doing a UE emulation of the mission critical app. So what you have now is the ability to patch in groups. And from a network perspective, that user device or user equipment is nothing more than another user on the system, but it's actually allowing you to bridge and gate and do a gateway connection with multiple interfaces. And what we're leveraging is not only the common gateways within P25, which is the ISSI and CSSI, but we're also looking at the IWF functionality within the 3GPP to make sure that you're interoperable and those gateways work. So the other thing that we're now trying to do, John, that you may be interested in this, is that we're trying to develop a broadband platform to allow interoperability amongst the different applications. And so we've successfully been able to demonstrate, I think at IWCE, we were able to show one solution, which goes the Harris Beyond, 2 mission critical push-to-talk in terms of interoperability. So again, recommend highly that we look at the applications on a whole with what your requirements are. Again, we're not saying that one particular solution is better than the other, but know your trade-offs and have key decision points so that you're rolling out and implementing them in a smart fashion. Obviously, cost is an issue, and that should also be part of the consideration in terms of long-term. So that's really all I had for you guys, but to understand that there's a number of solutions that we're working, and feel free to reach out to S&T to work with you guys to figure out what we can do, what are the gaps that you're seeing, and how we can solve the interoperability problems. Back to you, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Sridhar. Next slide, please. So, Walt, do you have any input you can share with us on Sidelink and the work going on with Qualcomm right now?
Yeah, I do, Jim, but I'm going to make it very, very brief here because we are already pretty much over time. But Sidelink, if you think about it, basically, mission critical means it's got to be there all the time, no matter what's going on, no matter what's happening and everything, right? You got first responders out there just responding to a disaster. Crisis happens, communication systems go down, towers get knocked over by hurricanes or tornadoes. There is no comms out there at all, but I've got my broadband device. If I have the ability to talk from cell phone to cell phone directly, regardless of what's going on in the infrastructure, I have a way of doing emergency communications. You got PACE, right? You got primary, alternate, contingent, and then emergency. If you think about it, Sidelink should be the E in PACE all the time. We can take it offline, and if anyone wants to talk about what we are doing with Sidelink, but we've got project going on right now with Qualcomm, and we're trying to bring the platform to fruition as rapidly as possible, because it really is, it's critical. If you think about it, in essence, mission critical push to talk was designed to be able to communicate even when the towers are gone. But if I don't have Sidelink in there, I still can't do that. So I look basically at MCX and Sidelink as peanut butter and jelly, okay? Without both of them, it's just not quite the same. All right, that's all I had, Jim.
All right, thank you, Walt. Next slide, which I think we've already covered Sanjay's talk. So Harish, your slide's next. So
Okay. All right, I'm Harish. I'm from Motorola Solutions. I lead the 3GP standard delegation and compliance for Motorola Solutions. Whoever don't know me, probably most of you may not know me personally. So what I want to talk about is interoperability when we talk about especially 3GPP standard. How is different, right? So basically, from the historically, when you say 3GPP standards for mission critical standard, it is we are hitting almost a decade of development in the specifications. So almost 10 years. If you look at this to 2016, 2014 is actually the work started. There was a earlier version, OMA Mobile Alliance push to talk over cellular and PCPS as a base. Then we got into mission critical standards, and there have been several releases from starting from release 13 to release 18, which is getting just finalized almost this quarter. And release 19 is some work getting started at stage 1, stage 2 level. So we have come a long way in the 3GPP standards, starting from the basic mission critical PTT, that's on the unicast, multicast, and what we call was that point of time off-net solution, which was based on the solution called ProSe, so which kind of did not taken up much in the industry. So after that, we had a normalized layer called common services got added, and we have MC data, MC video got added in release 14, and then onwards is more of making it more useful for the industry, which is interoperability. It's called IWF, and then server-to-server interface in release 16. And then railway guys got in and they said, okay, we could use some of this mission critical capability. And there is a lot of development on the railway side as well. And while all this going on, what happened on the underlying network, we had initially 4G LTE network. So which kind of got translated into 5G basic and 5G advanced, and future is 6G is something discussion going on for release 19 and 20. So now the benefit what you can see by taking these standards, 3GPP standard, global standard, is that when the technology evolves, underlying technology evolves, you are automatically getting that benefit for this public safety mission critical industry. That is the benefit you are getting. So we have seen the deployment with the 4G, and we have seen the deployment migrating to 5G. 5G something called non-standalone, which is the 5G RAN and 4G core network, or now 5G standalone, which is 5G core and 5G RAN as well. So the point is that evolution is kind of taking place automatically, and there is a satellite being talked about in the evolution stage. So there are solutions being talked about bringing satellite into the 5G more integrated way. So that is the point. Now coming to the interoperability, right? So when we talk of mission critical standard here, it's really a little bit more complicated, right? There's multiple layers involved.
It's not like one system will talk to another system, right? Maybe earlier critical communication, we had lesser component or lesser layers to deal with. The mission critical interoperability is, you can see that there is a application layer and there is a network layer. Actually, there is even a SIP or IMS core layer as well in between. And there is a network layer and there is a radio layer and there is a client applications and there is below that there's actual devices. So you can see that like 5 different layers and there is also each of this layer, right? As I talked about in a network layer, you are getting benefit of interoperability because network is evolving and application server just have to interface with that. And the same way you're getting a device connecting to a network, that benefit also you're getting automatically. But when it comes to the real public safety grade end-to-end solution, there is a quite a bit of thing you have to think about, right? So for example, if it's not about putting a client application on the device, so there are optimization you have to do in the device to make sure it's a public safety grade. PTT button press, how much delay between the press to the application it can get it. And there is something called DRX cycle, right? So which basically tells how fast you can connect to the device when the network asks you to connect, right? And of course, quality of service, everything Sanjay talked about, they're all critical part as well. Right? So all this aspect needs to be integrated and should work together. And also there is a devices side, the flexibility we get. We have open OS devices and purpose-built devices. In the open OS devices, this is much more challenging because you have a open OS operate like Android or Apple OS, those kind of devices, right? It's very hard to get those kind of optimizations, right? And most of the users are using those kind of devices. So how do you really get this kind of public safety enhancement on those kind of devices? That's really the challenge. So then others is multicast who are, so in the smaller like when there's a disaster happens, right? There is a condition where you need to reach out large number of group participants. Maybe multicast is something needed because you're not able to reach out to everyone in the unicast in the congested scenario. Even with the QS, even with the LTE unicast bearers available, there may not be enough bearers available. Right? So multicast becomes essential in those cases. So all these layers of interoperability you need to make sure. And other part is that now there is a control rooms, dispatch centers, and recording solutions, so on. So they also need to connect to the MCX system. So there is right now the approach is use user to network interface, which is really the client. It kind of acts like a privileged client connects to the system. So that is another interoperability. Then you need to connect to our LMR network, which is a critical part of the migration we talked about. So then we have a different MCX systems. There is 2 scenarios, right? One is the same operators might want to have multiple application vendors, application systems connect each other. So which is the system to system interwork within operator. And also another scenario is that this operator want to connect to multiple operators across the country maybe, right? Which is kind of broadnet project we have in something initiated in the Europe. So those kind of interop, how do you solve this problem? How do you it's going to be a complicated scenario. Now, those are the different layers of interoperability challenges you have in the mission critical standard. Okay. Now come to the maturity. I'm trying to show through some kind of line color here. So basically, today you can see that MCX application server to client and server protocol. So it's all kind of matured. We see that a lot of interoperability is successful. We have been a lot of MCX plug test has been there. It has been very successful. Now, whereas IWF also kind of maturing, MCX to MCX also within operator system kind of matured. Now, there is a lot of further interoperability work to be done to mature this whole entire ecosystem. So that's where I think we have to have, this kind of interop event is very important and we need to continue to have and push for this interoperability. Yeah, thank you. That's a point I want to.
Okay, thank you. So that wraps up our panel for today. I I will tell you that if you're going to be here on Thursday, some of the stuff that John showed is going to be active. So we're going to have a variety of users throughout the exercise. Some are going to be on LMR, some are going to be on FirstNet, some are going to be on T-Mobile, some are going to be on Verizon, and they're all going to be sharing those Tiris talk groups, the statewide interoperability channels that John mentioned. Also, we're going to have Sidelink being used at one of the spots in the exercise. So we hope everybody will have a chance to come over and actually see that in use. Not just device to device, but also relaying through to the network. And we'll be using a variety of applications over Sidelink, not just talking, but using TAC and other things. AJ, you had some announcements? Okay, do you have a question? Does release 18 include multi-hop for Sidelink devices, or is this just one hop relay? This is, can A communicate with D via B and C? Release 19 does that. Release 17 is single hop, release 19 is multi-hop, and nothing in 18? Didn't make it into 18, okay. Okay, Qualcomm is saying they did their best. Okay, did you have an announcement?
Yes. Howdy, everyone. My name is AJ Reynolds. You've probably gotten a lot of emails from me, so sorry about that. I do want to talk about the happy hour and the Bush tour that's coming right after this. Gracia, who is my grad assistant, will be outside with tickets. Everyone's getting a 1 drink ticket. We have a bar ready to go if you need a drink at this point. And those who have signed up for the Bush Presidential Library Tour, you guys were running a little bit late. So our Bush ambassadors, they're graduate students from the Bush School, are ready to take you guys on a tour. So they know we're running a little bit late. When you get back from the tour, you're welcome to have a drink before dinner. But we do ask that anyone who has signed up for the tour meet the Bush ambassadors at the entrance. Where am I? Closest to the Bush Library. So when you go out, turn right. As soon as you can make your way over there, we'd appreciate it. I think we have about 90 people signed up for the tour. So it's going to take a while to get everybody through. If you cannot bring